Welcome to Triday's RoundTable 53. JFK left the tools to shift from war to peace. Economic justice comes first. Here's how. For generations, the dominant economic model has promised prosperity while leaving societies divided, industries hollowed out, and wealth concentrated in fewer hands. This flawed economic thinking was the predictable result of an economic system built on extraction rather than production. As one former MBA graduate recently reflected, an entire generation of business leaders was taught that shareholder value alone defined success without ever questioning where that value came from or who ultimately paid the price. This roundtable continues our exploration of Henry George's Economics of Peace by promoting that genuine prosperity cannot exist without economic justice. If empire has long depended on systems that extract wealth from the many for the benefit of the few, what would an economy rooted in stewardship, production, and the common good look like? Join us as we examine the hidden assumptions behind modern economics and explore alternatives that place people before profit. Joining us for this discussion are Eric Daniel Busing, author of The Hidden Hand, Wealth, Power, and Control from Pharaohs to Corporations, and Dr. Marty Rowland, Georges scholar, lecturer, and contributor of the Forward to The Hidden Hand, whose work explores land value taxation from an institutional capitalist perspective. These roundtables were started by husband and wife co-authors Paul Fitzgerald and Elizabeth Gould, who have developed a plan for world peace at valediction.net. Just click on world peace at the top banner to learn more about that plan. Okay, and today we'll also hear from Chris and the other speakers, and then we want everyone to join us with thoughts and suggestions on peace in the world we want to build. But first, here are a few guidelines to keep in mind following each speaker's talk. Please raise questions and comments that are relevant to what the speaker has talked about. If you want to share information beyond the talk, you can have a minute or two before the speakers start. We welcome you to participate in our goal to make peace and sovereignty the foundation of life on Earth. And now, I'd like to introduce our host, publisher Chris Milligan.
Thank you, Adam, very much. I was amazed when I first heard of Henry George. I mean, Lord have mercy, I think, in my late 60s,
Wow.
and Henry George should have been taught to kindergartners. And,
Absolutely.
they tried, but, there's powers that be that would like to stay in control. Some people are calling them now the Epstein class, whatever. But it's just amazing what's going on today, and we continue to learn. And one of the things that I've always liked is books. I mean, and I generally start this off with some remarks from John F. Kennedy, because this roundtable started because of Paul Fitzgerald's legacy in the Fitzgerald family, and the research that Paul has found, digging into the Fitzgerald family and how that affects us today and the future, and it's just quite amazing. But I'm going to speak here from some remarks from John F. Kennedy when he was still a senator at the Cleveland Press Book and Author Luncheon. I'm not certain that all my fellow politicians would share my enthusiasm for these literary gatherings. The literary profession, after all, has not always been very kind to the politician. George Bernard Shaw regarded all political situations as smirched with compromise, rotted with opportunism, mildewed by expedience, stretched out of shape with wire pulling, and putrefied with permeation. Hilary Bullock wrote Epitaph on the politician himself, which declared, "Here richly with ridiculous display, the politician's corpse was laid away. While all of his acquaintances sneered and slagged, I wept, for I had longed to see him hanged.
Hmm.
Successful politicians, according to Walter Lippmann, are insecure and intimidated men who advance politically only as they placate, appease, bribe, and seduce, bamboozle, and otherwise manage to manipulate the views and votes of the people who elect them. It was considered a great joke years ago when the humorist Artemus Ward declared, "I am not a politician, and my other habits are good also." This was a time when Finley Peter Dunn's Mr. Dooley described our political leaders as fine, strong American citizens with their hand on the pulse of the people and their free forearm against the windpipe. Despite the steady stream of abuse, the best politicians the world have always turned to the best of world's literature. Prime Minister Gladstone of Great Britain had a devouring passion for books, which has probably been unmatched by any American statesman. Gladstone called his library the Temple of Peace. There he found rest and serenity after the noisy quarrels of British politics. American statesmen from time to time may retire from public office temporarily in order to rebuild their health, their wealth, or their political fences. But Gladstone retired from politics for a period at the age of 65 for a somewhat different reason: to prove by elaborate research that the beautiful and benevolent Iris of Homer traced her descent directly from the rainbow described in the ninth book of Genesis. This heroic act of scholarship finds no parallel among American statesmen. But let us not forget how much the world of literature has always meant to the statesmen of America. Thomas Jefferson was largely responsible for the rebuilding of the Library of Congress after the British troops burned the Capitol during the War of 1812. Not because he rallied the American people to its support, but because, having fallen into hard times without a pension for an ex-president, he was willing to sell the Congress some 6,500 books for just under $24,000. Some members of Congress objected, and they were skeptical of Jefferson. They were skeptical of his views, and they were skeptical of his books. But Congress finally gave its sanction to the sale, a decision which was important to the remaining years of Jefferson and even more important to all the years of this nation. In the Jefferson Room today in the Library of Congress, where some personal collections remain, you can study the reading habits of an 18th century scholar statesman. You can see which books he bought, which he read most often, which passages he underlined, and which pages he marked. And you will note that he met with distinction the most exacting test that can be imposed on any book lover. Out of the great mass of fugitive books, he was able to snatch the few that were ratified by the unerring judgment of posterity. The same books which helped to give him an enduring place in science, history, and literature and political thought. The Library of Congress also contains the personal collection of Woodrow Wilson. It is an interesting contrast. As you might suspect, the English essayist and orators found a proud place on his shelves. But there is a rather meager collection of books on history and political science for a man who enjoyed a professional reputation in both studies. Wilson, while still a young man, wrote that more of a nation's politics can be learned out of its poetry than out of all of its systematic writers on public affairs and constitutions. It is a harsh saying, but Wilson remained unshaken in this faith to his last hour. Yet we can take away from Wilson's book also the lesson of vast importance. He read and reread the books he loved until they passed into him, giving him an added grace to his mind and the discipline of noble ideas to his thought. The number of books you go through never matters. The only thing which counts for any reader is the number of books which go through you. Of course, in that sense, the greatest of all readers was Lincoln. He knew how to domicile books in his mind until they flooded the whole personality with their light and mystery, their passion and their glory. One story of Lincoln's habits as a bookman deserved to be better known. A reporter in Chicago wrote a campaign biography of Lincoln in 1860 to magnify his virtues for the presidency. Among other things, he said Lincoln in his youth had been a devoted reader of Plutarch's Lives. Later, it crossed the reporter's mind that Lincoln might be unfamiliar with Plutarch, so with a venturous boldness beyond the scope of present-day reporters, he wrote to Lincoln advising him to study Plutarch without delay so that every statement in the campaign document could be correct. What was the result? A copy of Plutarch's Lives was borrowed from the Library of Congress and charged to Lincoln's account. It remained in the White House from April 7th until July 29th, 1862. It is not a grateful feeling even now to know that Lincoln, in the strain and tumult of those embattled months of the Civil War, had the consolidation and inspiration of Plutarch's great book. Lincoln's reading habits, of course, were acquired young. In his boyhood days near Gentryville, Indiana, he spent countless hours supplementing his limited formal education, voraciously reading all the books he could beg or borrow, books like Pilgrim's Progress, Robinson Crusoe, Weems' Life of Washington, Franklin's Autobiography, and Aesop's Fables. A great books course for the 19th century. There were no free public libraries around Gentryville at the time, and future statesmen such as young Abe Lincoln were hard put to study the teachings of the past and the issues of the day. And, we've got an author here well, we've got several authors here. Paul and Liz wrote some great books called The Valediction, I strongly recommend. And then Eric Busey, who wrote The Hidden Hand, which is, he looked back in the past and said, hey, some of these bamboozles that we're dealing with today started a long time ago. So I'd like to hand this over to Alana Hartsock of the Georges community, and we're going to have a discussion about Henry George, about Eric's book, The Hidden Hand, and our children's future.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. And thank you for sending me the copy of Eric's book and then encouraging me to write a review, which I was happy to do. But in opening the book, I was most amazed to see that my friend and colleague, Marty Rowland, had written the foreword. And I was surprised because I had no idea until I found out later. And what we're seeing today is a lot of interpersonal and ideological and values-oriented connections between those of us presenting and attending. So I think Marty is able to talk now. Are you, Marty? Are you there? He was traveling.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Now I'm going to introduce you.
Okay.
Marty Rowland is former editor. Introducing Marty. Quiet.
Okay.
He's former editor of the American Journal of Economics and Sociology. Some kind of interference is happening. He's trustee and lecturer at the Henry George School of Social Science, senior fellow at the Asset Management Network, retired Lockheed Martin and New York City Parks environmental engineer, which he did for a long time, the New York City Parks engineer, until retiring a year ago, and mentor at Common Ground USA. So Marty's going to talk a little bit about Eric's book.
Okay, so appreciate the opportunity. I'm probably going to get cut off because I'm going under a tunnel and subway, but I'll arise and pick it back up. But anyway, I really enjoyed Eric's book. I think the most important was the four techniques that elites use to control people, and that was the coercion, the alignment, the conflict, and amnesia. And I think that was the biggest takeaway for me. Besides the very good and excellent writing on the history, that was the most important thing. I think the thing that I thought was most important was the idea that the elites only succeed when we essentially give up, that we don't fight back. So that's the essential message. Those are the highlights of the book that I enjoyed. Are there any details you'd like me to expand on further?
Okay, well, we can leave that to the comments then. You can contribute more. Thanks, Marty.
Okay.
What I was thinking about, in fact, today is a sort of a archetype of a pattern of search that I can relate to with how Eric talks about his life. First, he had a serious health crisis with double vaccination by the Army by mistake. And often a big, deep search begins with some sort of physical or emotional or spiritual crisis. And then he went through a metaphysical search for deeper meaning and truth. So I can relate, and others may too, to that two-step in the pattern. And then from there, he wanted to know who's controlling the world, what's happening in the world, what are the deeper roots of the very real down-to-earth problems of life on Earth. And thus his 22 years of research and compilation of massive amounts of material over 5,000 years, looking at the template, the basic overview of the elite control system of the planet. I was touched also, as I wrote about in my review, which I'll put in the chat. I want to read 2 paragraphs from the ending of his book, which Eric may never have heard, we'll have to find out, of Henry George, but he's certainly on the path, let's say, because this is what he wrote. He said, "This beautiful world belongs to all of us, not to the people who claim ownership through violence and fraud. We're caretakers together, responsible to those who come after us. They are few, we are many. Their power is borrowed from our surrender. Every act of resistance, every cooperative structure we build, every child we teach to think critically, every community network we strengthen undermines their control. This world is ours. We reclaim it now, not through violence, not through seizing state power only to reproduce the same patterns, but through patient construction of alternatives that they can't capture. Cooperative structures, decentralized technologies, communities organized around mutual aid rather than competition, knowledge preserved and transmitted across generations, culture built on stewardship rather than exploitation. Become a conscious caretaker of this inheritance we are all supposed to share. Remember what matters." So he has found the first principle of the person-planet relationship. Warfare or earth share is going to have to be earth share for us to survive. Now let me introduce Eric a little bit more and then he'll talk. Eric Daniel Busing is an independent researcher examining elite power structures, institutional control mechanisms, and the enduring patterns of dominance that have shaped human civilization. With intellectual precision, he analyzes how these forces operate across history. He reveals the architectures of influence that shape societies, economies, and global institutions while challenging mainstream narratives and encouraging deeper awareness. A U.S. military veteran, he spent two decades as a licensed private investigator and expert witness, developing specialized expertise in voice stress analysis. This practical experience honed his ability to trace hidden networks, scrutinize evidence, and identify inconsistencies. He also holds an MBA, bringing organizational strategy and systems level insight to his work. This rare blend of field investigation and advanced business acumen enables uniquely rigorous analysis of power dynamics. Based in Southern California with his wife and children, Busing balances demanding research with family life. This grounds his pursuit of truth in everyday reality and a commitment to future generations. His distinctive background and clear-eyed inquiry make him a compelling voice on power, history, and human agency. Eric, we're so happy you're with us, and we're so happy that Chris and Trine Day published your book so we could all read it.
Alana, thank you so much. My gosh, you make me feel so much better than I really am. I don't feel worthy of all of your kind words, and I don't know. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much, and thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for taking a chance on the writings that I have and the thoughts that I have and the research that I've performed. The gosh, you know, we have been, for lack of better words, we've been bamboozled. We have our entire epoch of humanity has been, how do I say it? We've been hoodwinked. We have an entire, gosh, I'm so nervous. I'm sorry. So the hidden
Okay,
hand.
deep breath.
The hidden hand's not a conspiracy theory. There's nobody sitting in back rooms smoking cigars. It's essentially it's pattern recognition. I have I have been able to see the pattern because of my unique background. Most people, we live in this concept of what I call Maya, and it's not my concept. It's a Hindu concept of that everybody's living under an illusion. And everybody has their own illusion based on their own worldview. In the Western concept, we call it tabula rasa. And in the tabula rasa, everybody has their own worldview. And the Maya, it takes it one step further. The Hindus have taken it one step further with that we everybody has our own illusion based on the worldview that we're raised with, the parents that we're raised with, the environment that we're raised in, the school systems that we're raised through. Everybody has this concept of Maya, this concept of tabula rasa that we all grow through. And I've talked about it in the second manuscript I put together, but that's not what I'm talking about now. With Maya, we all have an illusion. And in this illusion, it allows the powers that be to control our
Where we're going.
Yes, yes. I'm sorry. I'm not familiar with being on screen and being online, so I'm very nervous, and I apologize to everybody here. But
That's okay. You got to jump in the deep end sometime. We're happy you
I
can
know,
do it
right?
here with us. Because it might be 1,000 people next time. So like
no,
you got to get used to it.
no. I'm not good
Yeah,
with that.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Can I jump in
basically,
for 1 second? Can I jump in?
sure.
I'm getting from what you're saying, just to give you a little break, is that we're raised and we see things a certain way. We're conditioned, and we will always see things in that lens first
Yes.
before we get to step back and ask ourselves if this is the correct way to see it, so to speak.
Right. Absolutely. So the central question is, who controls the systems that control us? So I have done a lot of research. I've stepped back. Through my illness and through the loss of, I guess you would say, ego, I have been able to step back and take a glimpse of humanity from an angle that most people are not able to comprehend. Not comprehend. I don't want to make people feel minimized or at a loss of what they've gone through in this world. But we have all we have all been conditioned through our experiences, conditioned through the school that we attend, conditioned through the 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 experiences we all engage in as a child, and that right there creates what I refer to, and not what I would refer to as what the Hindus refer to as Maya. And we move forward from that. We move forward from that from tabula rasa. We move forward that from a blank slate, and as a result, each of us has our own conception of life, has our own conception of what this world is about. And that is the illusion that helps to allow the hidden hand, if you will, to take control of the dynamic of the world that we live in. And so they've been able to take control of this dynamic, and they've been able to run with it for 5,000 years. This entire epoch, we have had the illusion of amnesia. You know, this epoch didn't start empty. This epoch started with the late Bronze Age, you know, the many civilizations of the late Bronze Age, and that epoch was shattered, and it was shattered as a result of what the Egyptians referred to as the Sea Peoples. And these sea peoples, they came in and they conquered and they destroyed, and languages were lost and civilization was lost, and it created a concept, the amnesia. And this amnesia that they created allowed civilization to be reset. And this reset allowed them, the hidden hand, the powers that be, to create this new concept of what we were going to provide for our new epoch of humanity. You know, we've got Plato's
Eric,
references. Sorry, go on.
okay, let's explain coercion, alignment, amnesia, and
Right. Okay.
conflict.
Okay, when I say they, I don't mean a shadowy room. I don't mean cigars and men smoking cigars. I mean interlocking networks, financial institutions, media foundations, corporations whose interests converge around concentrated wealth and control. They don't always need to coordinate. When they do, when you control the financial system, the media, and the legislative process, the system produces an outcome you need of its own. So coercion. So the same tools, every era, the faces change, the technology changes, the mechanisms never do. Coercion. So initially, we've got Sumerian debt slavery to today's central bank digital currencies, algorithmic workplace management, student loan debt, medical debt, the gig economy. The debt never went away. It forces people into a coercive state where they feel like they have to comply because they're locked into it. We've got alignment, the second one. From Egyptian divine kingship to today's ESG scoring, we've got corporate loyalty requirements, demonetization, algorithmic reach, and rewards voices through staying in acceptable boundaries. It punishes those that don't. It was always exclusion. You never get a memo telling you what to say. You notice what you say determines whether anyone hears you. Amnesia. We've got the burning of Library of Alexandria to today's search algorithms burying anything that you say that they don't like. You can't imagine what you can't remember because everything's been been put into a black hole of amnesia, and you just, if you don't know it, you don't know it. And that's what we're living with right now, is we're living with an entire, like Graham Hancock says, we're living in a world where everyone's living with amnesia. And then conflict. Of course, we're using Hegelian conflict to create this division among humanity. You can go onto the internet today. You can go on to X, to Substack, to Medium, and you can post the truth. And the minute you post the truth about anything, you're being attacked. And you've got this conflict where everybody wants to attack you because you're speaking the truth. And it's not necessarily their truth, it's not your truth. It's just everybody's filled with so much conflict in this modern day that we're fighting each other. And because we're so busy fighting each other, we're not seeing the truth. We're not seeing the true big picture of humanity, because everybody's too busy fighting each other through this conflict that they've created. And through these four mechanisms, we've got this entire world that is disenfranchised from itself, disenfranchised from the truth. And it's unfortunate. I think I've always said, I think the biggest crime to humanity is the fact that we've been separated from truth. We've been separated from the time to reflect on what the truth is, what the real story of our humanity and our lives are. And it's an unfortunate thing. I truly believe that that's one of the biggest crimes to humanity, is that we just don't have time to reflect. We don't have time to read. We don't have time to research, to know the past, to know our own history. And gosh, again, I'm sorry that I'm so nervous here.
Well, we
You
have
did
with
fine.
us Ed Dodson. I think he's still here. And he's one of our colleagues in the Henry George work. He recently did some good research on a high school teacher at the beginning of the 1900s who was teaching these economic ideas of exploitation and land grabbing and Henry George and so on. And she was threatened because they consolidated what it means to teach history, just exactly what you're talking about. Great example. And they said, you've got to teach according to what the guidelines are, or you're not going to be teaching. Well, she continued on her path of teaching the truth, but it led to her firing. So we know this. I think the examples are good of all these four: conflict and amnesia, alignment. What's the other one? We should all, cohesion, is it?
Right.
Okay, we should all memorize that template because it's great to look at every situation and current events from that lens. But then, Eric, and I'm looking at page 128 of your wonderful, succinct 130 pages. You spoke the truth at the end. And I'm going to read it again, only one sentence or two. Tell them the truth, you say. This beautiful world belongs to all of us, not to the people who claim ownership through violence and fraud. Now, I've given lots of lectures, and I used to be nervous speaking, but I'm not so much anymore, just from doing it. And when I have said this kind of statement, that the earth, in truth, belongs to all of us as a birthright, it's an intuitive yes. It's an intuitive knowing. And then people might say, but it's not practical. How do you do that? I said, stay with your yes. The earth belongs to everyone. We didn't make the earth. Creator of some sort, somehow, some happenstance created the earth. It's to be shared. It's an equal right. So that intuitive truth comes forward loud and clear. I think as you speak that truth, as you do at the end of your book, I don't think you're going to get many attacks.
Yep.
Anybody who attacks that truth looks foolish. What are they going to say? Oh, no, that's wrong. This other family should have much more of the earth than my family should have. Nobody's going to say that. Yeah. So the brilliance of your book is that it's descriptive, but unlike too few books are then any kind of prescription at the end. And I believe that your book has a clear prescription and that understanding, that intuitive grasp. It's an invitation to empowerment of we the people of the planet to claim our rights to Mother Earth. I love it,
Absolutely.
Eric.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Eric, to go back a little bit in the hoary past, can you talk about the summer civilization and how they got the people in debt?
So, in the earliest civilizations, the oldest writing we have on this earth of this epoch is the Sumerians, and the Sumerians, we think we know what they've said, and there's a lot of gatekeepers that try to keep the Sumerian literature and the language from us, but we've got a few that have attempted to interpret the Sumerian literature and to provide it to us. And with Sumeria, my gosh, these clay tablets, most of them are still unread, sitting in the British Museum or other repositories that we don't even know what many of these tablets say, these clay tablets, these cuneiforms. But they're meticulous record keepers, and these Sumerians, they would write the debt. They would write how you would, if you would borrow money to feed your family, and it's not like you could just file bankruptcy like we could today. If you borrowed debt from the priest of the Sumerian priest, you owed that for second and third and fourth generations, and you were never freed from that debt. And so the coercion that was created through that debt just aligned your families with the entire establishment that was in existence of the day. And those same patterns they repeat today with the debt that we now, of course, we have bankruptcy today, but we still have the debt. We have student loans. We still have our individual lifetime debts. But the coercion that started this entire epoch for 5,000 years, we've started with this formula where they're in charge. They have control over the dynamic of what we believe and how we see we perceive our lives. And so I believe that the Sumerians, they're the most meticulous record keepers there are with these cuneiform tablets, and we can look at these tablets and we can see the control from the very beginning.
Right. So,
Great. Any other? Oh, Chris, I was just going to see if anybody else has questions or comments at this point. Just raise your hand and I'll pay attention. Go ahead, Chris.
well, what I saw there was, you had this priesthood in charge, okay, and people had individual plots of land, and they would, grow their barley or whatever. But then if they didn't have enough to make it through the year, they would have to go to the priest and say, okay, I need some food for my family, and they would write it down in these little tablets, and then that family would be in debt to this priesthood, and then they would use that debt to rule over them. And then, the other thing that you talked about in the book was about how these four things, coercion, alignment, amnesia, and conflict, through time, the elites got more sophisticated in how they were doing it. So the control even got more obtuse, okay, and harder for us to understand. And so, yes, I found the book very, very enlightening and to my understanding about the bamboozlement and how we found ourselves today.
Yes, absolutely. The systems have changed, but the MO, the modus operandi, it has remained the same. We are, I don't want to say a slave civilization, but it almost seems as if we are. We're we're falling in line with the established order that they've created over 5,000 years ago, and every generation continues on with this alignment that they've created.
Can you explain alignment a little more? What does alignment mean?
Well, let's look at, for example, the WEF, the World Economic Forum. If you want to become something in this world and you're invited into this economic forum, you join. But when you join, you have to adhere to their policies and principles. And so this creates a form of alignment that you didn't know that existed, but because you want to remain in the club, in the group, you continue to adhere to.
So it's an enforced worldview, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
But through your own mechanism.
Right. One that we find not cognizant of.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So, Prime Day, Chris is publisher of many books that look at conspiracy truths, revealing the truth of the control system and the mechanisms that Eric has outlined. What's the way forward, Eric? Can you say more how you see the way breaking out of this? Eric is seeing the pattern, just as seeing the pattern in our personal complexities, neuroses, and places where we're stuck. Seeing the pattern is 50% of getting out of it. So with the clarity of seeing the pattern as you present, that should lead us to what and where. And then Marilyn Langlaw has her hand up, and then Ruth, and then Adam.
Oh boy. So I don't want to be fatalistic, but I believe, sadly enough, that the entrenched elites have become so entrenched that it's going to be difficult for us to create our own path at this point. Maybe at the beginning of this epoch we had an opportunity, but maybe we weren't. Maybe we were never intended to have our own pathway. Maybe it was always guided for us. I talk about the sea peoples and how they came and they wiped out the entire Bronze Age civilization. And where did these sea peoples come from? Who are they, and why were they here to create to wipe out the languages, the civilizations, everything that existed in the late Bronze Age? But they came. The Egyptians wrote about them. We know that they are a fact of civilization of our present epoch. But here they are. So we can try little things. We can, like in the Army, there's an old saying, watch your lane. And so what can we do? One human at a time. We can watch our lane. We can try to guide ourselves, guide our families. Look, I write for the world, but I also write for my children. My biggest fear is that one day I'll be gone. And my third generation past me, they're going to forget everything that I know. They'll have the genetic memory, of course, but they won't have the knowledge, the research, the writing, everything that I've written. They won't have that. So I've written it, and I write essays on a daily basis. I sit here and I write and I write, and I pray and I hope that someday they will also remember everything that I've conceived and everything that I've researched and everything I've looked into. Because I think amnesia is the worst. We live in a world with amnesia, and this amnesia that we have been forced into living with is one of the worst.
Henry George.
Yes, yes. Look at Henry George. Look
Yeah,
at the
but we're just
beautiful concepts that he came through his own life, through his own suffering, and he wrote, and he became so popular. And then within a generation after his death, everything's been marginalized, and the amnesia, the dark hole has taken over, and it's so unfortunate. This earth was not ours. It existed before we were here. It will exist long after we are gone. And again, we are just caretakers. We are
Amen.
just temporary caretakers of this earth. And I I see our children. You know, I don't agree with Tucker Carlson's philosophy on many things, but one thing I do like that I have agreed with is the only thing we leave when we are gone is our genetic lineage. That is the only reward that we have is the children that we've left here. And we can leave money and the money will disappear, and we can leave businesses and the businesses will disappear, but hopefully our children are our genetic lineage, and they are our reward for a life spent well. And it's the only thing I agree on. That the guy's an idiot, but
okay. Eric, to inject, and then we're going to go to Maryland, to inject a little hopium, maybe a little optimism. Andy Burnham is the new Prime Minister for the UK. He's been an advocate for Georgia's land value tax for 15, 20 years, I think. So we're optimistic there. You mentioned Tucker Carlson. He recently had on Dennis Kucinich. I hope you see that if you haven't yet, talking about the National Defense Authorization Act. But I've been working with Dennis. Now, we talk every now and then, and he's probably going to declare for president. And he's strong on the land value tax. And there are clues that there's a way forward emerging beyond old right, old left, and a remembering of the truths that are being uncovered. Oh, Marilyn, go ahead, please, my dear. Are you back from your travels? It looks like you're back from, where was it last?
Yes,
Switzerland.
I got back last night. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Back to California.
Yes, glad I could join you all today. Thank you, Eric, for writing that book. I really enjoyed, Ilana, your review of it. Now I want to read it. I'm going to just start with one little slight disagreement about the only thing we leave to future generations. I think, Eric, you are leaving your writings. And even if the powers that be try to censor them, there'll be plenty of people who will still see them. The great poets and composers leave their wonderful creations and our lives are enriched from them. So those kinds of things I think we do leave in addition to the children and the future generations. But yeah, very point well taken. I fully agree that we've been bamboozled. Certainly, from the Henry George perspective, the very obvious truth that the world is there for everyone, that it belongs to all of us, that is something that is too often forgotten. I agree. And that we collectively have a responsibility to take care of it and make good use of it. For me, the other thing that has totally bamboozled so many people on this earth is that somehow it's accepted, it's okay, it's normal for some human beings to control and own massive portions of the Earth's resources and assets, while the vast majority of people have very little or practically nothing. It's kind of accepted that, oh yeah, we depend on the rich people. If we didn't have rich people, what would we do? And to me, that's the biggest challenge, is to wake people up to figuring out that's not okay. It's simply not okay. It's pathological for the human race to have a few people control so much of the wealth. So, Eric, what do you think about that fact of, or that aspect of bamboozlement, that people just accept the fact that some people are super rich and that's the way the world is.
We've been conditioned. We've been conditioned to accept that as a fact, and that's so unfortunate. We can look back at, for example, at the foundations. The foundations, everything from the Rockefeller, the Carnegie, to the Ford, every one of these foundations, even after the originator is long gone, they're still continuing the ideology of the originators' beliefs. And that is one of the places where we go wrong in this world, is we allow this money transfer wealth to continue into an anonymous the ideology is not anonymous, but once the original ideology is gone, we allow this money, this great wealth, to continue their ideology. Look at the Rhodes Scholarship Trust and the wills, and Cecil Rhodes. He believed that, oh, the British Empire is the greatest empire of the world, and I'm going to leave all my money to create this Rhodes Scholarship Trust, and I'm going to bring these scholars from around the world and teach them my ideology, and I'm going to continue this. We see the same thing with the Carnegie, the Ford, the Rockefeller. We see this with all these non-governmental organizations, and we need to stop that. We need to figure out a way to stop it. It's under the current laws, under the current guidelines, there's no way to stop it. But we need to figure out as a society to allow this money to benefit society, to force it to benefit society. All this wealth that's been locked up by these originators of technologies, whether it be oil or gas or whatever it might be. I mean, look at Carnegie. Carnegie said, "I'd rather build libraries because I don't want to give people raises, and I could direct their ideology with the libraries that I'm building." These people, they believe that they're the best thinkers, the best conceivers of knowledge, and they're incorrect. They're wrong. And we as a society need to figure out a way to take this power, not to take the power, but to take this ability of them to continue to allow their ideology to flow to future generations, which is what they've been doing, and that's a problem.
Yeah, well,
okay, Eric, now you're on the road with the fire in your belly.
Alana, I just want to add, thank you, Eric. I agree completely with everything you said. The thing that comes along with that power of that wealth and resource concentration is that with that comes the ability to make decisions that affect the lives of many people. So the decision-making power is within the hands of a very few. And a further level of bamboozlement is that we like to believe we're a democracy, but we're not a democracy. No. The decision-making power is in the hands of those who have the most money. And so wake up, folks.
Right.
Okay,
right.
Let's move on to Adam, and remember that the city of Allentown voted for a land value tax. Voted with their people power. and Maryland, we have Andreas Sampri with us, and he's on our board of our International Union for Land Value Tax. He's in Switzerland. Sorry you guys missed each other. Okay, finally, Adam.
Well, I was just going to, I raised my hand to chime in on that whole alignment thing, and I think it has to do sort of with what he was saying about constructing that worldview in your early years, so you always see through that worldview. And one big thing about alignment is that alignment works when somebody steps outside of that and tries to make a statement, then gets publicly crucified. And he said, make dissent from elite consensus career suicide. That is a huge part of it. That's a big part of it is You attack anybody who is kind of stepping outside of those boundaries.
You're a conspiracy theorist.
Right. And then another part of this is the cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance, where someone is operating in that, and then they're presented with information that totally it makes them step back and say, "Whoa, wait, this doesn't align. This doesn't align with what I believe." And so, even though they might all be facts, they'll just completely forget about it. Like I've had this happen to me so many times with people where I'll show them stuff and they'll just pretend I didn't say it. So it really works very well. And this is just a great book. The four mechanisms. I actually put a picture of the page in here in the chat if people want to see that. But yeah, I think that's about all I have to say. I mean, Eric, you did a great job. I always, when I'm on interviews, I have sometimes issues too, where I'm just like, man, I lose my train of thought and I'll start rambling, and it's like I've been there, so I get it. But you did fine. You did fine. We're all we all totally agree. Everybody agrees with what you're saying here, and
so Adam, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I really, really appreciate everything you're saying. And I do. I get nervous when I think that I want to say one thing,
Yeah.
and I try to direct myself, and because it goes against the grain of my mind and my process, my thought process, then I start stumbling over my words.
It happens. It happens to the best of us, you know.
So, one of the things I wrote about in The Illusion Architects, which is another manuscript that I just
tell us what that's about.
So, the best example I can tell you is I was raised in an environment where the standard cookie cutter mold did not take. Everybody goes to school. Everybody goes to public education, and we are in this world where the best way I can explain it to is what happened to my daughter. So my daughter was going to kindergarten, and I observed that the next kindergarten class over from her, they're sitting there, and they're prior to the class, you and I and all of our cohort group, when we went to elementary school, we got to go on the playground, and we got to play, and we got to jump around and play with the balls and such. Well, the modern education system has evolved, and it's not about allowing the person's individual expression to come out. It's about training them for compliance. The Austrian school that Charlotte Iserbyt discussed, and it is now in full force. And what I'm explaining here is what I observed is that while I was dropping off my daughter at kindergarten, I noticed the class next door. She was a teacher that had just come through the education system, and the education system, we teach our teachers to teach the same dogma, the same mechanism. So as I watched the classroom next door, the kindergarten class next door, I noticed that instead of playing with balls, all these children, they're walking in circles around the playground in an actual, like a racetrack with an outline around it. And if you look at the education system, they say, oh, it's to get all the emotion, to get all the energy out of the child. But what it's doing is it's teaching compliance. And I'll give you an example of what that's doing through another example that I've learned. I was at a Nikon seminar up at the LAX Marriott many years ago. And while I was there, maybe a room of 300 people in a semi-subterranean basement where the seminar was occurring, the fire alarms went off. The bells, the alarms, everything was going off. Well, because my cookie cutter mold was not the same as most children that grow up in this conditioned environment from the schools, I got up and I swiftly walked out of that room very quickly. I waited. Nobody else came out of the room. Everybody else is waiting for the instructor to tell them what to do. And maybe 10 minutes later, the alarms went off or stopped, they ceased. And I'm walking back in and I'm like doing the walk of shame, coming back into this room with 300 people. And they're all looking at me like I was the odd man for actually getting up and leaving during this emergency fire drill, or it wasn't a drill. And then it got me to thinking, when we're in education, when we're in elementary school, what's the first thing that we do when that earth, in California, we have the earthquake drills, you have the fire drills, you have all these drills in when you're being conditioned, when your Maya is being formed in your mind, you have this school that teaches you. And what are they teaching you? Hey, the fire alarm's going off, but you need to wait. You need to wait until a person of authority is telling you what to do. Do you get up? Do you stand up? Do you walk out of the classroom? Or do you wait for your teacher to tell you to leave? That we have an entire civilization now that has been conditioned to wait for an authority to tell them what to do. And so with my book, The Illusion Architects, I build on that. I build on that based on my childhood of not having that cookie cutter mold, that conditioning set, to where now I'm able to see, I'm able to look outside those perimeters, outside that conditioning, and say, what else is going on in this world that most other people are not able to perceive? And here we are, 2, 3, 4 generations past the evolution where our society left classical education into outcome-based education. And so now we're basically zombies. We're zombies listening to the teachers telling us what to do, and we're lost. We're a civilization that is lost now.
Okay, Eric, I would say that for this particular group assembled around this campfire, we are a support group for those of us who breaking the mold. Okay? And all of us can have an example of how we've been I never was cast aside for my beliefs because I happened to find a niche of working for the Henry George School of Social Science. My next county east, where Gettysburg, somehow they got in place a public funded Montessori school. I think Montessori is pretty good, pretty breakthrough education. We need to look for those little crevices and niches and build them open. And all of us here are doing that in our own way. So join the crowd. You got a support group here, Eric.
I love it. Thank you.
Ruth Gold Goodman, sister of Liz. Go for it.
Sister of Liz.
Hey, Alana, this is Marty.
Mom, shut up.
I'm afraid.
Okay, Marty, can't see you right now. We'll bring you back later. Okay, Ruth, we're doing hands up now, Marty.
Sure, no
we're
problem.
doing Ruth and then Paul and Liz and then Marty.
Okay. Yeah, first of all, I feel like this topic and, working through to understand the trauma loops and the shocks that we have received from the moment we were born to induce in us a dissociation, a fragmentation from our birthright as sovereign beings, as connected to the whole universe. There's been a perpetual, I think about things like all the vaccines that are going into babies. I'm thinking about circumcision. I'm thinking about the...
Mom, shut up.
Go for it, Liz. All the ouches.
Yes, and I'm thinking about the indoctrination in school and but it's the thing that's the most difficult is the way that we've been in this age. Our attention has been pulled out of our body, out of our wholeness of the whole system of our body, the quantum state of our body, which is our direct access to the quantum state of the universe, which is actually our direct portal to that profound creativity, and the matrix that supports that creativity has been just erased. It's been
Yes.
erased so that we don't think that we have no idea of the power that we are. And I think that's something we have to remember, that part of why this is being done to us is because those, I don't want to swear, but they are afraid of us. They're afraid of our innate power, of what it means to be human. But what's going on is that the assault on us right now is so great. It's with the pharmaceuticals, it's with the EMFs, it's with the virtual reality that we are caught in. And the thing about a lot of and kids looking at this, our brains form circuitries when we are both doing and thinking at the same time. We have to move our bodies in order to have new currents, new wirings in our brain. And when we're just going like this, nothing new gets activated in our brain circuitry.
Hey, Ruth.
But
hey, Ruth, aren't you in Southern California?
Yes.
Okay, so you and Eric can form a Southern California support group for the breakthroughs. Thank you. I want to move on now to Paul and Liz.
Ruth, I think before we move on to Paul and Liz, Ruth, you need to look at my thesis, Emergent Holopanentheism.
Okay.
I think you might appreciate that.
Where will she find that?
It's on ericbusing.com.
Okay, thank you.
I think you might really enjoy that concept of the divinity. It's not dogmatic. It's not religious. It's well above God as an emergent deity that emerges through our interactions with each other.
I think it's what many indigenous peoples.
Exactly.
Yes, and
Yes.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Paul and Liz. First, you guys got to look at my chest.
Oh boy! I like this.
What do you see? My shirt says 1111. All is one.
Make a wish.
All right.
Okay.
Well, first, I'd like to let Eric know I loved your book. I think it is absolutely. I'm not saying this because long books are bad. Don't get me wrong, but it is quite something to be able to get that much powerful, logical, lined up. All the ducks are lined up in a row, and you really can just march through it and grasp it. I think that really is incredibly powerful.
Thank you so much.
I want to add another layer you might want to consider to add to that. I found a book a long time ago. It's called The Ever-Present Origin by Jean Gebser. Jean Gebser was in the time of Jung. He was a philosopher and worked in the same field, but his thing was the evolution of consciousness. And what he was able to do was track all of the what he felt was evidence of the changing consciousness of human beings from the very beginning. And for instance, at the earliest stage, for instance, humans were totally unconscious. So everything that you're looking at that was an expression of a human being gave you an understanding. And I think what you're tracking, okay, is not just these external things, but I like you to consider this evolution of consciousness. And here we are, we're all saying, I kind of liken it to, it's like when you grow up and your parents are still treating you like a 5-year-old and you're 50, okay? Well, what do? I mean, I've made this point many times. I find it very disturbing that we do not have a word for an adult child. When you speak about a child who happens to be 50 years old, and right, you have to call them an adult child.
We're all children if we don't have adversity.
But that's my point. But now that we know it, but this is the point about consciousness. Lots of things have been done in that evolution of unconsciousness, which includes all the people who had the power to do all the things that you've identified. But now we're coming into consciousness. And I believe that it is far more difficult for people to misuse their power when they use it consciously. And so what we're dealing with, I think, is actually trying to help make that shift where people's entry into these opportunities to make decisions and then implement things are doing it with a conscious understanding of the power of the effect. And that clearly, we can see that, I think, may be the most important missing component of all the people who have powerful positions, who have gone through powerful systems, whether it's secret societies, Skull and Bones, whether it's Council on Foreign Relations, large corporations. These individuals are literally being trained into no responsibility for what they actually do. And so this is clearly, I think, a part of the impact that you are tracking. And so our job, I think, is to figure out what can we do. And I happen to feel that Gebser's idea of this evolution of consciousness, and he has a beautiful description of what he feels the next stage will be, that we will be in a state where there will only be truth. You will literally not be able to speak anything but the truth coming out of your own body. It will be literally living, the truth will be living in your body. And when you express a word, they talk about the logos and the power of the logos. That, for me, is what the power is. Every word you say will be truth coming out of you. And he describes that as our future. And I just always felt that was a future that I could hope for.
Are you familiar with the Global Consciousness Project? It was a project that was hosted at Princeton University, and it's gone on its own since then.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know enough.
It's my emergent holopanentheism. It's about exactly what you were just saying. Consciousness grows, and the Global Consciousness Project was a project started at Princeton University where they would put electronic eggs. They called them eggs. Basically, they're random number generators all around the world, and prior to significant events, these random number generators would start flipping to one side. It's like a random number generator is like flipping a coin, heads or tails, heads or tails. And so these eggs, these pods, all over the world, prior to significant events, whether it be 9/11, any other significant events that occurred on this earth, these random number generators, these pods, would start flipping to one direction over the other. And they've used empirical studies to show that there is a global consciousness to this earth. Mm-hmm. And maybe that is where we're all headed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And again, that's where I lead with my emergent holopanentheism, because I believe that we all are part of a whole. We're all part of a larger consciousness that's being built. And I think the evil of this earth is trying to keep us from that.
As I said, parents who don't understand that you've become an adult let's think of them that way. A lot of them I know are cruel. Well, there are some cruel parents too. So that idea of this but that's my point. Once you're conscious, you will have a much harder time misusing that power. And that, I believe, is a very powerful goal that we can work towards. And that's why I think in your work, you've established this beautiful layout for 5,000 years. I'd like to see the consciousness layout that goes along with that.
Right.
That you laid out.
There's a Carl Johan, before 2012, I got into the Mayan calendar, and Carl Johan Kalaman wrote. He's a scholar that wrote extensively about the Mayan calendar and the Baktuns and the consciousness that comes through this. The Mayans are very unique people, and they had knowledge well beyond their primitive ability. And he talks about consciousness extensively. that he maps the Mayan calendar onto a consciousness of this earth that continues to evolve upward from cellular life all the way to where we are now. And he actually provided a map. You may want to look into that book.
Amen.
Put it in the chat, would you?
Okay. I believe that Mr. Marty Rowland is here on his phone and wanted to give some input again. Are you available, Marty? There, he's coming.
Yeah, I appreciate. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. This is a fantastic, discussion, and I wanted to say a few things related to my environmental engineering background and my practice and such. It has to do a little bit about the consciousness of the world, the Princeton project that Eric is talking about. But I think the best analogy, as hard as the elites want to control us with those four factors, there's one thing that they don't have. And I'd like to say that we are like little, living seeds that could go into hibernation, and we're below the ground, and the elites think that they have Roundup to kill everything in sight, but they don't. We exist. We exist, and we might have like coatings on us, like a shell or something like that. But the best that we can do is that we all understand that we are living and that we have some truth to us, so that when the right time comes, that we can know that the right time is there. And I think that's what Eric was trying to get at, is that if we're all somewhat ready for it because we know what truth is, I think that's the secret about what groups like the Henry George School can do, and others, and people reading Eric's book. So that was my contribution. I think we've got a lot more power than we might fear that we don't. It's just a matter of having that cooperative spirit. So that's all I got to say. I want to remind people that tonight at 6:30, I have my financialization course. And if you go to the hgsss.org /ZTHE-PERIL you'll be able to register. So that's all I got. 6:30. See ya.
Okay, thanks, Marty. And yeah, big shifts once enough people turn that light on in their mind and hearts, isn't it? And I think we are living in that time. I think, but at the same time, some of my people that I really follow and respect, like Jeffrey Sachs and John Mearsheimer, when they're speaking about the wars, and others, Chris Hedges, they're very astute at their analysis, but frankly, they are not showing a way forward. And the clarity about the way forward has so much power. So we to go beyond what to say no to and then know what to say yes to is a big, big shift. All right. And my questions were like others of yours. What's causing war? What's the cause of poverty, wealth inequality, all these social problems? I didn't find it in school. I didn't find it in my master's program or the PhD program that I started. I found it because my intuition guided me to a little notice on a telephone pole in San Francisco that said, there's a Henry George School free 5-week course and talking about these social problems. And I said, okay, I'm going to go to it. I was so mind blown with economic enlightenment with my questions answered. My long search was over for the most part. My inner search, my outer search. I dropped out of the PhD program and I became education director, and I followed a not lucrative, but sufficient career path with the Henry George movement for most of my life. And I just to say the importance of tenaciously clinging to our questions, how important our questions are, to keep asking them until we find the answer, because the answers are there somewhere. We just need to focus with the intention to find the answer. But then when we find the answer, we need to shift gears. We need to shift gears to become active, to become promoting. It's a very big gear shift to go from seeking to finding to doing. That's my little rant. So does anybody else have hands up? Any more to say? Or I'm
Andreas.
gonna...
Andreas.
Andreas, go ahead. Andreas in Switzerland.
Yeah, since about John Gutzrath and the evolution of consciousness, I just wanted to mention Ken Wilber and
Ken Wilber.
On the topic, the mapping out human consciousness to history. Very interesting. Just put it out there.
Oh, we're in an auditory loop with Andreas now. Auditory loop.
There.
And Eric writes in the chat, emergent holopantheism. Yes, for the holographic universe. Very important to see that the wars out there connect with the wars around where we live, in our situations, in our neighborhoods, in the homeless problem, and so on. So yes, Ken Wilber was a great one, mapping consciousness. Thank you, Andreas. Okay, next, Chris, did you want to?
Well, is there any last words from anybody? Eric, you have any last words?
No, sir. I've my anxiety has just been expressed. And I thank you guys for allowing me this forum to help build stronger.
Right. Well, I just really enjoyed your book. I found that it taught me a lot, and it's something that I strongly recommend people, because it helps us understand where we came from, and hopefully where we're not going. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I am hopeful. I really think that we have some good years ahead of us. There's again, there's a book called Generations: A History of America's Future, and these are the same people that also wrote The Fourth Turning. Okay. Right. And what they talk about in there is that, we have these four generations that help us move forward. And once you have so many of these cycles, you then have a major cycle change. And they say that, we're in that, cusp of that change. Okay. And one thing they show historically, when this change happens, it's very disruptive to the ruling circles that are going on. So I truly think we have a very good chance of creating, something new, and getting the love out there, because, the information is out there. The books are out there. With the internet, we can talk to lots of different people, and this, and that's how change happens. Okay, around a table, people talking about things and figuring things out, because everybody comes to the table from their own direction. They might have walked around a bit, but still they have their perspective. And when you're at the table, you get to hear other perspectives, and get to learn. And so I'm going to go ahead and end this again with some words from Mr. Kennedy. And this is again from his speech to Cleveland book people in 1959, before he was a president. But this country pioneered in the development of library facilities, but we can no longer rest on our laurels. National Library Week gives us an opportunity to spotlight the unfinished agenda. 80 million people in the United States have inadequate library service. 25.5 million have no public library service at all. 11 million children have no access to school libraries. I take pride in my small part in passing the Library Service Act of 1956, but neither the administration nor the Congress has seen fit to implement that act fully, to to bring public library service to rural areas. I'm hopeful that this year Congress will appropriate the full amount authorized in matching grants to the states. But the primary problem is not simply one of money, it is one of attitude. It is a question of whether we are more interested in reading books or making books, in Maverick or Macbeth, Zorro rather than Zola, Peter Gunn or Peer Gynt. The question is whether, in this age of crisis, we will remember the words of the Old Testament that wisdom is better than strength, and a wise man is better than a strong one. If this country is to be wise as well as strong, if we are to live up to our national promise and live up to our national destiny, then we need more new ideas for more wise men reading more good books in more public libraries. For what we need now in this nation, more than atomic power or air power or financial, industrial, or even manpower, is brain power. The dinosaur was bigger and stronger than anyone else. He may even been more pious, but he was also dumber. And look what happened to him. I do not confuse brain power with word power. No age has ever been more prolific of words. Some people are said to have an instinct for the juggler. Official Washington today has an instinct for the windpipe. But words are not enough. Missiles are not enough. Atoms are not enough. All of these may help us gain time to find a solution, but they are not the solution themselves. What we need most of all is a constant flow of new ideas. Ideas on how to break the deadlocks, in the Middle East, the stalemate on disarmament. Ideas are on new defensive and deterrent strength and strategy. And we cannot not obtain new ideas until we have new books and new authors and more newspapers. A tired nation, said David Lloyd George, is always a Tory nation. And the United States cannot afford to be either tired or Tory. For however difficult, however discouraging, however sensitive these issues must be, they must be faced. Let us reaffirm our belief in debating with dignity and differing with respect. A debate that is courteous but candid, friendly but frank, incisive without becoming inflammatory, constructive without sinking into mere caution. For the hard, tough questions for the next decade, for this or any other group of Americas, is whether any free society, with its freedom of choice, its breadth of opportunity, its range of alternatives, can meet the single-minded advance. Can a nation organized and governed such as ours endure? That is a real question. Have we the nerve and the will? Can we carry through in an age where we will witness not only new breakthroughs in weapons of destruction, but also a race for the mastery of the sky and the rain and the oceans and the tides, the far side of space and the inside of men's mind? We and others now have the power to destroy with one blow 1/4 of the Earth's population, a feat not accomplished since Cain slew Abel. For the Russian peasant has looked up from his hoe to fling Sputnik into the outer space, opening not a new frontier of hope for all mankind, but a new and somber frontier of fear. We cannot hope to escape the prolonged and powerful competition, a competition which demands that we act from enlightened impulses, but never act impulsively. Can we meet this test of survival and still maintain our traditions of literary freedom and dissent? I think we can. For it is in the enduring faith of the American tradition that there is no real conflict between freedom and security, between liberty and abundance. Through centuries of crisis, the American tradition has demonstrated the contrary, that freedom is the ally of security and that liberty is the architect of abundance. So let the debate go on, and may the best ideas prevail. For only in this way can we as a self-governing people choose wisely and thoughtfully in our task of self-government. And it's only in this way that we can demonstrate once again that freedom is the handmaiden of security, and that truth will make us free. I want to make sure that this never happens in the country. I want to make sure that all facts, we hear alternatives and listen to all criticism. Let us not be afraid of debate or dissent. Let us never avoid criticism or nonconformity. Let us encourage it. But to keep that faith alive, to keep that message meaningful at the time of doubt and despair and disunity, will require more thought and more effort on your part in the press and on our part in the government than ever before. It will require leadership, better equipped than any since Lincoln's day to make clear to our people the vast spectrum of our challenges. In the words of Woodrow Wilson, we must neither run with the crowd nor deride it, but seek sober counsel for it and for ourselves. In 1861, the College of William and Mary in desolated Virginia closed its doors for almost 7 years. The students were gone. The faculty was dispersed. The buildings were torn. But every morning during those 7 painful years, President Ewell carefully ascended the steps and rang the chapel bell. It was an act of consecration, a proclamation that learning would again return to that stricken land and touch it with abiding glory. Cannot the hope and anguish of our own blundering but bountiful age awaken a spirit of compassion and honor in our writers and artists? The whole world is waiting with eager gratitude for that message. So are we in America. Let us at least be worthy of the high destiny of American literature and art. Onward to a better future for our children. Amen. And thank you all for joining us for this roundtable. And again, amen, and onwards to a better future.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Take care.